Now, a KSEE24 news special, Monkeypox. What is it and what do you need to know about it? Stefani Booroojian moderates a roundtable discussion with local health experts and the Fresno County Department of Public Health. Monkeypox, facts, not fear.
Good evening. I'm Stefani Booroojian, and welcome to our primetime special, Monkeypox, Facts Not Fear. By now, you've likely heard about the recent outbreak of the virus called monkeypox. As we report on an increasing number of cases developing around the world, including right here in the Central Valley, you might wonder, what is monkeypox? Where did it come from? And should we be concerned? Let's take a look at how we got here. Although the virus may be new to many of us, it is not novel. It's the latest public health emergency. More cases are on the rise in Fresno County.
Governor Gavin Newsom declaring a statewide emergency.
Questions are now being raised about, how this particular monkeypox strain is being spread.
Monkeypox, or Empox, is a virus that dates back to 1958. The first case was identified in research monkeys in Copenhagen, Denmark, suggesting its name. It wasn't until over a decade later, in 1970, when the first human case of the pox-like virus was discovered in a 9-month-old boy. Although the direct cause of the virus remains unknown, scientists who have studied Empox for years have established a series of effective safety precautions and treatments. And here's what we know. Clinically, Empox resembles a less severe version of its viral cousin, smallpox, which was eradicated worldwide in 1980. Empox is observed as a zoonotic disease, meaning it's transmitted to humans from infected animals. But the latest viral strain has begun spreading from human to human. This is an area of concern and continued research for infectious disease experts. Cases are often found in rural rainforest regions of Central and Western Africa. And while the risk is generally low, cases have been growing at an alarming rate worldwide. So how did we get here? In 2003, the United States reported the first outbreak of Empox outside of Africa linked to infected animals imported from Ghana. Since then, several countries have periodically documented individual cases related to travel. But until now, none have resulted in a widespread outbreak. In early May 2022, the first cluster of cases was reported in the United Kingdom, many of which could not be connected back to international travel. Later that month, an individual traveling to Boston, Massachusetts, was diagnosed with Empox, becoming patient zero for the United States and leading to the current outbreak. The virus can spread through direct skin-to-skin contact, bodily fluids, and more rarely through contaminated items like shared bedding or towels. Patients typically experience symptoms similar to smallpox, including a fever, chills, and an intense rash that can spread across the face and body. The rash often looks similar to pimples or blisters and may be painful or itchy before turning into scabs or healing. Unlike smallpox, these symptoms are mild and rarely fatal, but can take up to 21 days to develop after infection. There's a lot to learn about Empox transmission and the current situation developing across the country. But what we do know is that staying informed and looking to local health officials for guidance is one of the best ways to protect yourself and your loved ones. And staying informed and speaking to health experts is the goal of our roundtable discussion this evening. And together with the Fresno County Department of Public Health, we want to help calm concerns over the Empox virus, as well as answer any lingering questions that you may have at home. We'll talk about everything from transmission and at-risk populations to prevention measures and treatments. And to help guide us through the next half hour, we're joined by the Fresno County Interim Health Officer, Dr. Race Vora, Dr. Kenny Bond, the Assistant Dean at UCSF Fresno and Mobile Health, and Julio Romero, the Assistant Director of Fresno EOC Health Services. Welcome to all of you. We appreciate you being here. Now, back on August 1st, Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency in response to the Empox outbreak. A few days later, the White House did the same thing, calling the rapidly evolving situation a national public health emergency. Now, after all that we've been through for the past 2 years with COVID, there might be a more heightened sense of fear among residents with the words public health emergency. And Dr. Booroojian, we want to begin our discussion with you. How did Empox become a public health emergency, and what are the benefits of declaring it as such?
Sure. So this is a disease where the outbreak had started several months before the declarations of emergency at the state and federal level. And I think the world medical community was just watching this outbreak of cases spread very quickly, which was quite concerning. I think that the emergency was done after a lot of deliberation to make sure that we were able to match the resources that were going to be required to really take on and contain this epidemic, which was crossing many national boundaries and really affecting a lot of different people all over the U.S. and here in California.
And in making that declaration, there is funding that comes in to help support the effort to
There's
get
funding,
this stopped.
there's resources, there's local control. It really allows us to streamline and be very flexible about the kinds of response that we're able to do at the local level and really work much more aggressively with our state partners and our national partners.
What are we seeing at the local level? Dr. Bond, how prevalent is it here in Fresno County? I know you are monitoring that situation, but we are hearing about monkeypox cases throughout the Central Valley now.
Yeah, and it looks like currently California is a hotspot, unfortunately, for monkeypox. We have over 20,000 cases within the U.S., over many of those thousands in California. In Fresno County, I think 25 is our current count, so still not a very high amount, but still we're getting counts every single day of positive cases coming through.
Mr. Romero, at the clinics that you service, what are you seeing locally?
We're seeing a lot of people with interest for the vaccine, and we're also getting a lot of information from the public health department to get the word out to the communities so that they're properly informed about if they might have been exposed to someone with monkeypox and what the proper procedures they should take to protect themselves and protect their family.
Also, when people come to the health department or to these clinics who have these concerns, there are tests that they can take before maybe any symptoms show up. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. It starts with a history and really figuring out what someone's risk might be based on their prior activities, their close contacts, etc. And then as we do our physical exam, we really have to make sure that we're not missing any other diseases that could look like monkeypox, and that might involve other infectious diseases, bacterial infections, even allergic reactions or dermatitis.
Right.
And so that's a kind of a broad list of diseases that we want to rule out, and some of those do require laboratory testing, including the monkeypox that can be confirmed with a swab that's done on one of the lesions or several of the lesions.
I see. All right. Well, thank you. Now, during the planning process for this discussion, we wanted to address the questions of Fresno County residents, and we'll be playing those throughout the show. But let's start with some of their concerns about Empox here at home.
My question is, how concerned should we be about monkeypox?
Should we be concerned this will be the next pandemic?
Is there monkeypox in the Central Valley?
Okay, well, we know there is monkeypox in the Central Valley. We've already talked about that. And we're already dealing with the COVID pandemic, of course. Does Empox have the potential of reaching that same level of concern?
You know, that's a great question. I think that this disease is very different. So this is not COVID. It's not going to be something that is transmitted in very high capacity through the airborne route, the way that COVID is. You're not going to be able to catch it just by sitting close to someone who's infected and just sharing their airspace in the way that we know COVID can do that. So for what it's worth, this disease is not going to spread as far and wide as COVID can. However, this is still a pretty intensive illness in the terms of that it can cause a lot of pain. It can cause a lot of dysfunction with how people are able to use the bathroom and really even take liquids and things like that. So we really want to prevent as many cases as we can.
Well, there's also, you know, a certain level of pandemic fatigue. I know working in public health, working in clinics, you know, we're all pretty much sick of COVID, although it is still here. Are you concerned that the population maybe isn't taking Empox seriously because maybe people think, well, it's certainly not as bad as COVID? Mr. Romero, if you'd like to weigh in on that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's not the lack of people not taking it seriously, because we are still receiving a lot of phone calls from people concerned and want to know if they are eligible for the vaccine. So people are interested and are tracking this very closely, but I think we are doing our part to get the information out there to the community to kind of lower any fears that they might have and properly vet those that you might have been scared at the beginning and then realize, oh, I'm actually not eligible for the vaccine because of the questions that we use to ask them to see if they're eligible.
All right, so still many questions to be answered. We'll be hopefully answering some of those as we go on. Well, now that we know what Mpox is and how it's impacting our area, the next important question is more on how it is spreading. And we'll dive into the details of transmission, the at-risk populations, and what preventative measures our public health experts here recommend. So stay tuned.
This is a KSEE24 News Special in partnership with Fresno County Department of Public Health.
And welcome back to Monkeypox, Facts Not Fear. And we're joined by health experts Dr. Ray Sforja, Dr. Kenny Bond, and Julio Romero. And now that we've covered what the virus is, how it started, and why it's a public health emergency, let's clear up some of the confusion about how it's spreading. And here are a few questions from local residents.
Who's really at risk? When they say, is there a general population? Is it just gay men? Can it be women? That's what I want to know.
How is monkeypox transmitted?
That's what we all want to know. Dr. Bond, how is the virus transmitted, and who are the at-risk populations?
So I'll start off with how it's transmitted. So absolutely, monkeypox can be transmitted by respiratory droplets in infected people, as well as sharing clothes, towels, bedding. That is all possible. However, statistically speaking, what we're looking at is almost all of the spread is happening from skin-to-skin contact, and most of that is through sexual contact. It's not considered a sexually transmitted disease, but it can be transmitted sexually.
Okay, so can shaking someone's hand, if someone has a lesion, maybe a small lesion that they really haven't even noticed yet, that would be a method of transmission?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Romero, even though there are specific risk groups, is the general population still at risk?
The general population, to a certain extent, yes, but we don't really want to stigmatize and say that this Mpox or monkeypox is specifically in, say, the LGBT community, but we do want to make it known that it's more through close physical contact, sexual contact from someone who already has the monkeypox vaccine. Plus, there's been other groups that would be considered more at risk. You have those that are actually handling the monkeypox virus, that are working with the actual sample. You have those that might have attended an event where monkeypox might have been present. And then you also have, I believe they just added, Dr. Vora, sex workers, prostitution, or even like sex trafficking, which has become another more prevalent population.
You mentioned, Dr. Bond, about transmission, from a towel, but how, this, and I know this was a question that came up a lot during when we were first learning about COVID. How long would the virus, stay transmissible on an object, like a cup or something like that? Do we know that at this point?
Well, we do know that the virus can stay alive on certain surfaces. It depends on the surface, actually. So different surfaces do different amounts. But it can stay alive for hours on a surface, so it is possible that you can hand it and get it to someone else.
Okay.
Having said that, it has to be on a pox that's open with some secretion. So while it can happen, we just know that we don't want to dismiss how we definitely should be hand washing and doing proper procedures. But at the same time, we do know that almost all the cases that are being transmitted are from direct skin-to-skin contact.
Okay, Dr. Boora, is Empox fatal? And I guess this I just kind of came up with this question. Are there certain areas of the body where we notice the rashes more? Would it show up on the palm of our hand, or is it just in certain parts of the body that it's mostly seen?
So in extraordinarily rare and tragic cases, it can be fatal. There's been several fatalities reported worldwide in the current outbreak. and a single fatality that's still being investigated, but most likely related here in the U.S.
Why would that be fatal?
So if someone is severely immunocompromised, for example, and then this virus allows your skin to just have multiple breaks in the skin, and then you can have bacteria that kind of get in there, and then you get overwhelming infection from that. There's a lot of different ways that this virus could lead to fatality, but it usually is related to someone having a real problem with their immune system or just not being able to fight viral infections in general. So that's kind of what's been described. It's extraordinarily rare.
Yeah. All right.
What your second question was about which parts of the body can have it. Really, this is showing up on every single part of the body.
Oh, okay.
And so when you look at the pictures, you know, people are showing their extremities, their private parts, what we call the underwear zone, mostly because of that intimate sexual contact that's becoming the major route of transmission.
Which
it kind of makes sense.
What makes it so uncomfortable, too.
Right, and it can be very uncomfortable because, you know, that's how people have to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
If it's in the face or inside the mouth, they can have so much pain that they just can't even stay hydrated.
All right.
So those are the kinds of things that can land people in the hospital. Most people are going to recover on their own because it's a viral infection that seems to clear up in probably 2 to 3 weeks.
All right, thank you. Well, at the end of the day, of course, no one wants to get sick, and we'll have more questions from local residents about how they can protect themselves and their loved ones. Let's listen.
How do you prevent monkeypox?
Aside from the vaccine, is there any other precautions I can take to keep myself safe?
Dr. Bond, what are some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves, prevent this transmission? We've covered some of it, I know.
Absolutely, but by far and away, the number one thing is if someone has an active rash that may be monkeypox, a new rash that's undiagnosed, is to avoid skin-to-skin and direct contact with that person. That is by far the most important thing. And for that person to seek help and isolate themselves so they're not infecting others until we can figure out whether it's monkeypox or something else.
I guess if a rash suddenly appears, we should, yes, not have skin-to-skin contact, but probably go and seek medical attention. Is that something that you recommend, or should we wait a day or two and kind of see if it goes away?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
You nailed it. If you have a rash that you've never had before and you don't know what it is, and even if you're not sure, the best thing is to reach out to your doctor and see what the next steps are. If you don't have a doctor, there are other clinics, or you can contact County Public Health about next steps, about where you can go and whether that requires further investigation.
If someone, you know, maybe does feel like this rash has come up and they haven't made it to a clinic yet, should they be wearing a mask? Or Dr. Booroojian, what are some of the other safety measures that I think we're all tired of? A lot of people are tired of wearing masks, so it's hard to make that recommendation. But what should we be doing?
Especially in this heat.
Yes.
I sympathize with some of the resistance to some of the safety practices. But whether you're talking about COVID or the influenza or this illness, really it's about common sense and hygiene. You know, if you have a rash with open wounds, you should really try to protect those that you love by not sharing plates and cups and surfaces without cleaning them. You shouldn't be sharing bedding and towels if you have open sores, regardless of whether it's monkeypox or not.
Or anything.
Right.
That's a good point.
And with masks, those are not necessarily seen as a huge protective layer in the general population. However, for people that live together, that might afford one more layer of protection, because it's really that close, intimate contact where you're sharing airspace for many hours, where an active monkeypox infection could get transmitted through respiratory droplets.
And if someone is, at what point does it stop becoming contagious?
Typically, when the rash clears, as these scabs, they kind of go through stages. But as the lesions turn into scabs, and as the scabs kind of dry up and fall off, I know that that's graphic, and I apologize.
Yeah.
That's
well,
basically,
we need to know.
That's basically whenever we're advising these patients that's when they're really in the clear. They tend to feel better too. This is a very painful infection, and as they fight this infection and get better, they themselves have more energy and feel better. So those are all good signs that they're on the mend.
Okay, that's good to know. Mr. Romero, should individuals who work in high-risk environments, like your people who work in clinics, should they be concerned, and what's recommended for them to stay safe?
The very first thing that we recommend is the vaccination. We have multiple vaccine clinics available throughout Fresno from Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, even during the lunch hour. We even did a special vaccine clinic during Art Hop where we had probably the most amount of vaccines given that day. And a lot of the things that Dr. Boora was saying too, we received phone calls from a mother who was concerned about the monkeypox vaccine and was interested in receiving it. When we talked to her, come to find out her son was exposed to someone that did have monkeypox. And they live in close quarters with their son, so they were eligible for the vaccine in those situations. So we urge everyone, if you find yourself in any of those situations where you might be at risk of being exposed to someone with monkeypox, please look at the county website, look at the Fresno EOC website,
and see what's available.
And the UCSF website, see what vaccines are available, when and where.
This is all great information for all of us. So obviously prevention is the key, but what happens if you do get sick? We're going to tap into our expert panel for all of the answers on that coming up after this break.
This is a KSEE24 News Special in partnership with Fresno County Department of Public Health.
And welcome back. The current spread of the Empox has defied previous models of transmission by spreading first in animals and then to humans. And now an increasing number of cases are stemming from human-to-human contact, with researchers working to understand many of the unknowns. Fresno County residents wanted to know if they test positive, what happens next?
How do you treat monkeypox once you have it?
Is there a cure?
And we're now turn these questions over to our panel. And Dr. Boora, once again, who needs to get the vaccine? The county doesn't even have enough to vaccinate everyone, but who should be coming in and getting that done?
That's exactly right. Currently, the vaccine supply is limited. So this is really reminding me of the early days of COVID.
Yes.
Whenever we didn't have vaccines for everyone, but
people were lining up in droves, begging, borrowing, stealing.
We had tiers of eligibility to really identify those high-risk individuals that we really wanted to protect.
Yes.
While the criteria are different, we still have the same logic where we want to identify the high-risk populations and get them protected first. And that includes our community that is made up of men who may be having sex with men, men who have multiple sex partners, those who've been men or women that have been identified with sexually transmitted diseases, just because we've come to understand that intimate contact is such a high risk for this particular illness. But then also, like Julio said, you know, our frontline clinicians and our laboratory workers and really those in occupations that might be at higher risk.
They need to protect themselves.
That's right. And anyone who's immunocompromised and losing sleep for it about this illness, we really want them to talk to their doctor to see if they would qualify. But like we said, you know, we've tended to really reserve this vaccine for those high-risk populations until more supplies are available.
And Dr. Bond, if someone does get monkeypox, just run down the protocol of treatment.
Yeah, so really there are two treatments available in general for monkeypox currently. So first off is they're the monkeypox vaccine. So it's interesting how the vaccine, which we think of being preventative, much like with COVID, is actually indicated for early infections and actually shows that it will stimulate your immune response and shorten your course. So actually, if you're unvaccinated and get exposed to somebody or actually have early signs of rash, we actually will administer the vaccine to see if that will help your course. The second one is what's called Techovirumat, which is most commonly referred to as T-Pox, which is actually an antiviral that's specific to smallpox and monkeypox. There's only a few places that are actually cleared to administer that because it needs a specific clearance from the FDA, but that you should contact your doctor and contact Fresno County Public Health about getting set up if you're a candidate for the antiviral for monkeypox.
Okay, well, before we say goodbye, we do have some time for some final thoughts from our experts. And Mr. Romero, we'll start with you. What would you like to add before we say goodbye?
Yeah, so I just want to urge the community to be mindful and also recognize your own symptoms and your own health. Talk to your local medical provider. If this is something that you're concerned about, please reach out regarding the vaccine. Also, because we work very closely with sexually transmitted infections, that's been one of our immediate reasons why we were able to start administering the monkeypox vaccine. So we've been able to urge a lot of people who may not have thought they were high risk to actually think about getting the vaccine. So that's really what I want to leave it at.
Okay, very good. Dr. Bond?
I would just add that people should have an appropriate response to this, right? It's an outbreak. outbreak, it's something concerning. We shouldn't freak out about it and close up and be a hermit, but at the same time, we should think about what our risk stratification is. Are we a high-risk person? A lot of people who may be having multiple sex partners may not be doing protected sex. They may not be thinking about themselves at risk, but really this is a way to protect themselves.
I do have a quick question that I thought of. If someone gets a vaccine, like with COVID, can you still get monkeypox? Does the vaccine protect you 100%?
So a great question.
Yeah.
So with anything, nothing except death and taxes, I think, is 100%,
Yeah.
just to clarify. But the monkeypox vaccine has been shown to be very effective in preventing severe disease.
Okay.
So it certainly lessens the disease and it probably prevents it. Having said that, for the majority of cases, it requires 2 vaccines given a month apart, and then you're 2 weeks after that second vaccine that you're fully vaccinated. So it's not like one shot and you're done.
Okay. Dr. Booroojian, real quick, your final thoughts today.
Thank you for having us. This is a fantastic chance to really educate our community. I think this crisis and really the COVID pandemic have taught us the same lesson over and over again, which is that prevention is worth investing in. And we know how to prevent monkeypox. We know how to prevent a lot of other sexually transmitted illnesses and a lot of other infectious diseases in general. It's really up to our community to understand the importance of getting vaccinated, and that includes the Jynneos product for monkeypox, but also your flu vaccines and your COVID boosters.
The whole gamut.
That's right.
All right.
It's all worth doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, if we learned anything today from the pandemic, it's that these situations are constantly evolving as scientists work to understand the virus. And as that information is released to the public, it's important to stay calm, stay vigilant, and do our part as a community to keep as many people safe as possible. And we hope this roundtable discussion helped clear up any concerns about the Mpox virus. And for those who have additional questions, you can visit the Fresno County Public Health website at fcdph.org/mpx. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Stefani Booroojian, and good night.